Hello, thank you for joining us for Changes to Reporting. My name is Phoebe James and I'm a Professional Development Officer with the Primary Health Network. Before we go any further, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands we are all meeting on today. I come to you from beautiful Awabakal country and I want to pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging and any First Nations people joining us today. I want to mention before we start also, this session is being recorded. The recording and the PDF slides will become available on our PHN website in the Education Library in the next few days. If we have time, we will do Q&A at the end of the presentation, so please put your questions in the question box and we'll get to them if we have time. There's also an evaluation that needs to be completed and I will be personally very, very grateful if you could complete it, and I'm sure Amanda will as well. Today, presenting for us, we do have our very own Amanda Martin, who is the Manager of Commission Services within the PHN. I will now hand over to Amanda.
Thanks for that, Phoebe. I would like to also just acknowledge that we are meeting on traditional lands. I'm here in the land of the Darkinjung people, so just want to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and recognise the contributing connection that the First Nations people have to the land that we're meeting on. So thank you everyone for your time this afternoon. I really do appreciate you joining us for this webinar. This will be the first of a series of training, education and events that we will have to promote the changes to reporting that we've been working on over the last 6 months or so. And the purpose of this afternoon is just to provide a bit of an introduction as to what the project has been and where we have gone, and also to provide a little bit of instruction about what you can expect going forward from the 1st of July. Obviously, we do want to spend more time communicating those changes to you, and I do stress that this is the first of several sessions, formal communication and information that will be made available to you. But first, I do want to just highlight and stress that the two key elements of the project that I'm going to be talking about today are looking at how we've been able to streamline some of our reporting processes, recognising that this will be a staggered implementation, but it is only for those programs that upload to a minimum data set. So that includes the primary mental health minimum data set, the alcohol and other drug treatment services national minimum data set, known as NADABase, Headspace, and our Care Finder program. So what we're hoping to do is streamline our reporting processes between Folio and the MDS, but also what will then link to that is streamlining some of our deliverables and KPIs. And while that will be seen in those programs that do report up to the minimum data set, there will also be some other changes that impact some of the other programs and contracts, and how some of the quality KPIs that are in everyone's contracts will be monitored and tracked going forward. So with that said, what I will jump into, so following some feedback, both ad hoc and from our provider surveys that we did about 12 months ago, we really recognise and acknowledge that reporting is often a burden for providers, and often not what clinicians are really planning on doing in their day. You know, I'm a nurse background, and certainly I didn't get into nursing to report and you know, do that back of house data collection. My aim as a clinician was to care for people and to make their day a little bit better. But we recognise that ongoing reporting does require additional resourcing. It does detract from that therapeutic intervention, and it does appear to be a lot of red tape for those people that are not working in that data and reporting space. But at the same time, we still do need to balance that financial accountability and performance management in those contracts, because as a PHN, we report up to the Department of Health. We have some mandatory in some of those minimum data sets that I mentioned. And there's also that financial stewardship that we're responsible for, given that we're dealing with public money, which is yours and my taxpayer dollars. But we have to acknowledge that our processes have matured and evolved as a PHN and as a Commissioner of Services. And now that we have implemented dashboards and have access to better real-time reporting, we feel that the time is now really ripe for us to look at how we get reports and data from our providers and what we do with that information. So we made a commitment to review the processes, and where possible, we're looking to reduce that reporting as much as we can. But we first of all have to recognise that we do have some complex reporting structures that include qualitative and quantitative reporting, and all of that is still very important for us to be able to do our jobs as a PHN. So looking at some of the complexities is where we started with this project. And without going into too much detail, what we did was systematically consider 6 key objectives in how we look at reporting, and looked at the data requirements and the business processes in amongst all of those. Now, it was a project that so far has gone for about 9 months. So with that, you can see that it has been quite complex. And we're certainly looking at 6 key areas around reporting requirements, how we're going to communicate that out, how payment structures might be impacted and what the workflows look like, some of the rules that guide our best practice to make sure that we're commissioning services in a rigorous way, but how the systems and real-time reporting impacts that. And then obviously at the very end, how we're going to develop some training materials and resources to support the ongoing nature of those needs. And looking at some of the systems that we work within, we started off by mapping the data requirements that we have as a PHN. And central to that is the PHN Performance and Quality Framework that the Department of Health uses to monitor and assess the performance of PHNs nationally. Now, there are a number of indicators and key performance indicators across 7 objectives and priority areas that align with the programs and services that the PHN commission. And these indicators are used to guide the performance by the department across PHNs nationally, with a subset of those indicators directly used to assess individual PHN performance. And that's really important because essentially that then guides the department around which PHNs are performing and which PHNs then are able to attract more finances and better funding so that we can continue to deliver services or continue to commission services for you guys to deliver to our populations. And feeding into that, the commission services reporting through the MDS, through Database, the annual plans that you complete, our tender and contract data that we gather, the folio and key KPIs that we report, and some of that organisational data that we collect is really important to inform that PHN framework. But in addition to that, there are a number of indicators that we can provide on a 6 or 12 monthly basis. But the department also accesses third-party information to input into that framework as well, and from the Digital Health Agency or directly from those minimum data sets as needed. So what we've tried to do is look at how we can align our performance reporting to that PHN program performance and quality framework. Now that is available on publicly on the department's website, and you can search it up by just Googling PHN Program Performance and Quality Framework, and you'll then be able to see what those specific indicators are across those priority areas. But in all of that, we do recognise that some of those areas are mandatory reporting and so are not therefore negotiable, and obviously can't be changed. But in that, separate to that, we have some key contract deliverables that we're trying to streamline to reflect those department KPIs that sit above the PHN. And where the focus will be moving forward will still be on the things that you're collecting at the moment. Outcomes, so patient-reported experience and patient-reported outcome measures, that cultural competency, and timely access to services, particularly where there is a suicide flag noted as part of the referral. What we've tried to do is align the KPI thresholds that will be across contracts to the PHN program performance and quality framework. So commission services are aligned with how we're measured by the Commonwealth, which then gives you a line of sight and visibility to demonstrate how that data is being used and to provide a meaningful purpose. The KPIs you'll see will reduce, and we'll move some of those quality KPIs that are in contracts at the moment to different areas of reporting. So through the annual plan and then tracked through quarterly meetings that are had with the commissioning coordinator and the PHN. You will notice as we go forward that some of the contract structures and language will change to reflect some of the changes that are being made, but essentially there will be no new indicators or new reporting introduced. Initially, we're going to be starting with those programs that report into the primary mental health minimum data set. So the majority of mental health services will start to see these changes as contracts are renewed or executed if they're new services. And for many of those contracts, you as service providers will actually see a reduction in reporting by up to 50%. Meaning that we can use the data that's in the MDS and collected by third parties to monitor some of that performance that you're currently reporting in through Folio and other structures that are used. But you will see that the duplication between Folio and the MDS will no longer be there and it will be removed. So for some programs, that will actually mean that the quarterly Folio checklists that you've been doing now for many years will become obsolete and redundant. Checklists, the Folio checklists that come quarterly will only be used going forward where there needs to be some sort of reporting by exception. So it may be that there's a particular KPI that measures, for example, hospital avoidance or readmission rates that the MDS doesn't actually capture. So that will still be a Folio checklist that is reported, but the bulk of the information will be captured through that MDS. And we will then be able to access that on a more regular basis through some real-time dashboarding that our health intelligence team are currently developing. So what has changed as part of the project? So reporting processes via Folio for programs that don't have a minimum data set will continue to happen through Folio. This will include programs like After Hours, ITC or Integrated Team Care Aboriginal Health, Primary Allied Health Services or PALS, and some of the psychosocial services, particularly where there are peer workforces or non-clinical workers working in the space. We still will maintain that level of monitoring and financial accountability because we still need to focus on that performance and financial stewardship to ensure that we're monitoring and managing those costs appropriately. If it's appropriate contracts, those numeric targets will remain in place, and we will still have that focus on patient-reported experience and outcome measures, as I said before. We still recognise that the quality KPIs that were introduced about 18 months to 2 years ago are important, and at a local level for our CEO and board, they remain important elements of the contracts and measures of quality within our services. So we will still focus on that, but it will just be through a different way. There will still be the requirement for those services uploading data into the minimum data set, that happens within 30 days of the end of the month. but that's not a change. That's currently what occurs. There will still be those strong relationships that you have with your commissioning coordinators and those quarterly meetings to discuss and to understand the intricacies of the different programs, so that any data that we have are not just numbers on a page. We really want to understand the challenges, barriers and successes that you are having with the clients and in providing these services. And that qualitative data, is really important to tell those stories that are so important around client journeys, client experiences. Quarterly payments and contract execution payments will be unchanged, and that will maintain those cash flows both for you as providers, but also for us as a PHN. And there will still be the requirement of submitting that annual plan each year, although we have revised that down so that it is just that meaningful data that we're looking to capture. That will be done at the beginning of the contract or the start of each financial year, depending on the timing of the contract. And obviously, we will still need to track and have you upload those annual insurances, workers' compensation and other credentials via Folio, and the links to be able to do that will still continue as they have in the past. So for us, the next steps are looking at implementing these changes in a staggered way across mental health and suicide prevention programs in the first instance. In order, we're looking at how these changes can be made in new contracts that are going to be executed before the 30th of June. Then we'll look at those contracts that are renewing and need to be executed before the 30th of June, of which there are quite a number. And then going forward, we'll look at those contracts that expire past the 30th of June, and then depending on the end dates, whether that's a variation that we look at negotiating with the provider as it's needed, or we just hold off until there's a new contract that needs to be in place. But you will start to see these changes occur in some of the contracts across programs, but it will be at different times. And I can't stress that enough. Our contracts team are a small team, and so they're working within their existing resources. So please have some patience. We do have some time before the changes are fully in place. So yeah, just bear with us. We will then take the time to scale the changes to the other programs that have those minimum data sets. So aged care, the alcohol and other drug space and headspace. But we will be using that same methodology that we used for the mental health services to map the various requirements against the minimum data set, including Folio and how they all align to the PHN program performance and quality framework, and then looking at how those changes in the contracts will look. We'll continue to discuss these changes with you guys as our commission services and seek feedback, because we know that not all of the contracts will fit easily into some of these changes, but it's our commitment to reduce that burden of reporting wherever we can, and that still stands regardless of which contract it is. There'll be ongoing training, as I said at the beginning. This is the first of a series of sessions that we will hold, as well as information coming out through the newsletter, through the commissioning coordinators, and other various resources that will reflect the changes. So for now, as I said, there will be more changes happening. We will be having conversations with providers as the contracts do start to roll out and as the contract renewals do start to roll out. And we're really keen to have those conversations so that we can understand the impact that these changes will have for you as our commission service providers. But we hope that we'll be able to achieve that reduction in reporting burden that you've told us you experience. And we hope that that will then allow you to deliver those services more effectively to monitor and track that service delivery in the way that we need to for the department and the Commonwealth. So that concludes the session for today. If there are any questions, Phoebe and I might just give you a few moments to type those questions in, and then we can go from there at a bit of a question and answer session with the remaining 10 minutes or so.
Thanks, Amanda. Jam-packed full of information, so thank you. No questions have come through so far, so hopefully people are tip-tapping away.
And look, I have to just remind people that, you know, this is just one forum. So questions through commissioning coordinators, through your normal channels to contact. People can also email me, and I think most providers have my details, so I'm more than happy to answer any questions outside of this session that come along. But yeah, hopefully, you know, the advantage of having some of that reporting reducing, hopefully people will be doing a happy dance on the other end of the screen right about now.
So we have had one come through from Danielle Adams. The question is, how will real-time data work with the 1 month time period to get data into MDS? Will there always be a 1 month lag?
Yes, so what will happen is while it's not real time as in immediate, it's certainly better than the quarterly data that we're getting at the moment. So we will be able to have a clearer understanding of the data as it gets entered into the MDS, but recognising that it will never be in perfect real time because there will always be that lag. Obviously, as data is entered into the MDS, it will become visible in the Power BI systems that our health planning team are developing. But we're not expecting people to change from that 30-day requirement, and that will then always leave a bit of a lag.
We've had Liz Stannon come through with a question asking, we currently submit an MDS quarterly. Will this change to monthly?
Ideally, yes, it will. But certainly what we are hoping that our providers and our clinicians that subcontract to the providers will be doing is getting into the habit of actually updating that data more frequently so that it reduces that ongoing burden of a large upload at the end of a quarter. So we're encouraging more frequent uploads, but yeah, certainly that's something that we can negotiate with the individual providers.
All right. We've had another one come through. They're coming through hot and heavy now. Keep them coming, guys. From Emma Hughes asking, will service providers be given information regarding how KPIs are calculated out of MDS data / the methodology of calculation?
I'd have to defer to the health planning team for the calculation, but certainly those dashboards that we will be developing will be provided back to the providers at that quarterly meeting with the commissioning coordinators. Now that has started with some basic dashboards that are available now. Obviously they will change to align with those KPIs. But in terms of how those KPIs are measured and reported, that's magic that the health planning team do behind the scenes and beyond my scope. So I'll have to defer that one to them and come back to them.
Okay, great. Well, no other questions have come through yet.
Like I said, you know, if you do have a question or want more information, speak to your commissioning coordinator, who's the first point of contact. I'm also more than happy to take any sort of conversations via email or phone if you've got my contact details. but certainly the commissioning coordinators can share those as well. So feel free to reach out if we haven't quite got to you in those conversations just yet and you do have a burning question.
Okay, great. All right, well, I want to thank Amanda for presenting. Really appreciate the time taken to make this presentation. And thank you for everyone attending today in your lunch break and taking the time out to sit here with us and expand your knowledge. We really appreciate that as well. And if you could please, pretty please do the evaluation that you'll get sent. It gives us great feedback around what you guys expect, what you want, what works, what doesn't. So it is quite important for us. But with that, look after each other and stay safe. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.